It's back to school season and a lot of you are preparing to go back to the university, and some of you just gained admission into the university. And if you clicked on this video, you probably gained admission to study medicine and surgery or a medical related course. But in today's video, I'll be sharing with you all the knowledge I've gained for the past 7 years of being a medical student that would have been beneficial to young Abby a couple years ago who just gained admission and is anxious and oblivious of what her study career has in store for her, so that you, my love, wouldn't make the mistakes she made in the past as well. Before we get into the video, hi bandmates, and to my new viewers, hi guys, I'm Abby, a student doctor based in Nigeria, currently in her 5th year of studies. And now that we're done with the formalities, let's jump straight into the video. The first thing you should know as a Nigerian medical student, most especially, is to learn to study lecturer by lecturer. Once you gain admission into the university, especially when you get into your second year, because your first year, you're usually taught what you've been taught in secondary school. So it's like you're doing a brush-up work on what you've done in secondary school. But that doesn't mean that if you're being lectured, that you shouldn't write out the topics that is being given to you, and also write out each topic under each lecturer's name. Most especially when you get into your 200 level and above, you should learn to organize your topics according to your lecturers. And also it will help you to organize your reading as well, because if you're like me that likes to read systematically, it will help you not to skip out on subtopics, and to also help you to prioritize, because you might notice some particular lecturers by the time you're doing your test, by the time you do your first test, you do your second test, you'll be able to understand and notice a pattern in the way that the questions are being set. You'll be able to recognize certain lecturers whose topics come out often, and certain lecturers whose topics do not come out that often, or certain lecturers whose topics come out more in the MCQ than in the theory. So noting your lecturers and the topics that they've taught you will help you to analyze these things and help you to study smart when it comes to examinations, because by the time you're studying in a scattered pattern, all the topics all at the same time, you might, one, lose track of time, two, lay emphasis on topics that might not come out because this lecturer does not set questions often, and then you now ignore those whose questions usually come out often. Because if you're in the university in Nigeria, you understand that most of these lecturers, they don't have the time to be going to reset questions over and over again, so they usually go back to their question bank, usually past questions, to pick out questions. And some of these questions that are being picked out are usually set by maybe the HOD or the dean. If they are teaching, maybe those in higher positions, they usually prioritize their questions most of the time. So if you're to study lecturer by lecturer, have your topics under each lecturer, it will help you to decode this pattern of exam questions and also help you to study better. Next thing you should know when it comes to studying as a medical student is understanding when you're studying too much unnecessary details. Because one thing with examinations, especially when it comes to writing examinations, not just orals, you're going to be expected to answer certain questions in a particular way, a particular pattern. So by the time you're ignoring certain outlines and headings that you're supposed to learn and also understand how to answer them, and then you're fixated on just things that you feel like are simpler but are unnecessary, then you're wasting your time studying. But you need to understand that sometimes you might not need to know every single detail in a particular topic for you to pass that examination. Although you might be like, yes, I'm trying to study to understand them, but there is no how you're going to know every single detail in each topic. The topics that you're going to be studying are very bulky, especially when you come into the clinicals. You will understand that what you're reading is quite enormous, so you should be able to narrow down to the minute details that you'll be required of, and then focus on that and make sure you study that, because that's the thing with medical school. Obviously, they don't expect you to know 100% of everything. That is why the pass mark is 50. If not, the pass mark would have been 100%, meaning that they want you to know everything. At the end of the day, you're still human. There is so much your brain can do, and medicine requires a lot of brain work. So don't go wasting your time on details that may not be necessary for you at that particular stage of your medical school, because there's some details that you might be required of after you've graduated, but as an undergraduate, that might not be necessary for you. So you should be able to recognize when you're studying things that are not so necessary, curb those things out and focus on just necessary details that you're required of to know as a medical student at each particular level you enter into, so you don't get carried away by so much information that is being bombarded to you at once by this textbook, by this lecturers. You learn to pick out the necessary details that you'll be required of and focus on that, so that you have time to spare to also lend out your time to other topics that are out there waiting for you. To learn to ask more questions. And this is coming from my own perspective as a pioneer student. I don't have senior colleagues to look up to because I am the senior colleague. But I had to find a way to start asking questions to not just the people that are around me, like my colleagues, but to other colleagues in other universities, because no matter what you do, no matter how you try to do it on your own, you still need a little bit of guidance, because every new class you step into, it's something that is completely new to you. You've not seen that type of course before. You've not been taught this type of thing before. New languages are being thrown at you, so you need to find a way to ask questions. If you're too shy to ask your lecturers questions, ask your colleagues questions. And if you're too shy to talk to your colleagues, find a way to find other students in other universities in Nigeria, because the curriculum is a bit similar. It might not be exactly the same, but it can be quite similar. So learn to open up, learn to reach out to people and ask questions when you need to ask questions, because if these questions remain unanswered, it's going to affect you in the long run. One is especially for my clinical body. You should learn more clinical approach and less theoretical approach. When you get into your clinicals, especially when you get into your 4th year, your 5th year and above, you should learn to start reasoning clinically and not just theoretically. It's one thing for you to read your book, your textbooks and everything, but how can you apply this thing in the clinical aspect? That is how you should be reading. If you pick up a particular symptom, you pick up a particular disease, you look at it in such a way that you're looking at it as a disease a patient is presenting to you. You're not just looking at it as a theoretical work. That's why it's always advised that you go into the hospital to look for these diseases that you've read, see whether you can find any patient at all that has this disease and plug them and look at their folders, because you might see certain symptoms in your textbooks or in your e-notes. By the time you get into the hospital, you will see that these patients also present with symptoms that you never really thought would exist in such a patient. And then you now go back and do your research, and then you see that there are some rare cases where yes, these patients will exhibit these signs or these symptoms. So if you're reading or you're looking at a particular topic, don't just read it just verbatim. Read it whilst trying to picture a human being in front of you that is going through this particular disease, and reason like how a doctor will reason. You'll be like, this particular patient has this disease. What do you think? What do you think this person will present with? Try to see whether you can task your brain to think clinically like how a doctor will be thinking, and not just how a student will just be thinking to just read and just to write. Think about it in a practical way, because you're not just going to read and write. That right now, as a clinical student, you're not being tutored. You're not actually being coached to be a doctor. So you have to start reasoning like one and not reasoning like just a mere student. So for my clinical people, especially, when you're studying, study like you're a doctor already, like you've been given your MBBS certificate, because right now you are a junior doctor. So you have to start thinking like one. Every topic you're reading, relate to it like you are reading about someone with a particular case, and also try to see whether you can see these cases in real life, and also do your own research to see whether there are rare cases and rare symptoms that you'll be seeing in this patient, so that it's not when you meet a patient with this particular disease in the clinic that you not be like, this person does not have this particular symptom that I saw in the textbook. That means that person might not have this disease. They might have the disease, but with a rare symptom. So you should read and study like you're studying a human being with a particular disease, and not just reading and studying to just go and write what you saw in your textbook. Simplification of hard topics to suit you as an individual. There might be topics that might be really bulky, that might be really ambiguous to you, especially if you're someone like me that has to read like 2 times, 3 times for you to actually understand it. You should learn to simplify the terminologies you see in the book, in the textbook, in your slides. If it's too ambiguous for you to understand, have a dictionary beside you. Type out that word that you're looking at that looks kind of ambiguous to you and simplify it in your own terms so that you can understand it. If the English that they are using there in the textbook, too much medical grammar is going on, simplify the English to the one that you can write and you can understand. Teach yourself like you're in primary school or secondary school or 10th grade or 4th grade. Just look at yourself like a child that is trying to grab a new knowledge they've not seen before. And how would you teach a child? You teach them in the simplest terms possible. Then make sure that you're teaching yourself to study in the simplest terminologies as possible. So if you see a particular topic and the wordings, the sentences that are there, the terminologies used are too ambiguous for you, simplify them. That's why if you're this kind of person that is kind of slower, you start earlier to start looking at these topics and simplifying them for yourself. But by the time exam approaches, you already have the simplified format of that topic and not the format that will be hard for you to understand under exam pressure and tensions. All they really need is for you to give them the information that is required, whether it's in their exact terminology or in a simplified terminology. As long as they mean the same thing, we're good to go. So make sure that you're studying in the right terminology that is simple for you to understand. Watch more videos alongside with your theory and practicals. If you're a visual person, I for sure am a visual person. If I'm to see something once on video on the screen, moving objects, not just words, it tends to stick more in my long-term memory without me going back to look at that particular topic again. So if you're like me, you can make out time even if it's in the midnight. Once you're done with your activities, you can put on a video and watch that video. By the time you look at these videos and you go back to the topic to study, then you see it's simplified, because most of the time these videos you're watching, there, like I said before, in videos they usually tend to use simplified terminologies when they're teaching you. So make sure you watch these videos, make out time to watch these videos if you're a visual learner. It will help you to understand the theory aspect even more and simplify the terminology for you even more if you are not understanding it at that particular point in time whilst reading your theoretical work. So if you're not understanding it and you're a visual person, please go ahead and watch a video. It will help you out to understand it even better by the time you go back to that topic. More slides, less of textbooks. Look, I am not against textbooks, but the thing with your lecturers, like I said again, is especially when it comes to exams, if you're studying in depth, okay, good or fine, but make sure that you've studied the slides and the handouts that they have given you. Make sure that you've gone through them before you go ahead and then combine other handbook, other research, other textbooks. Make sure you've looked at those slides, because like I said before, these lecturers, they don't have the time most of the time to start creating a whole different question by going to get textbooks. They get their questions from their question bank, and most of the time it's from the slides that they've given you or from the handouts they've given you. So make sure that you prioritize reading the topics from the slide they've given you, from the handout they've given you, especially when you're preparing for your theory and your MCQ, to really help you out a lot, because most of the questions they're asking is from the notes that they themselves have made, because most of them have made these notes really comprehensive using different textbooks, using different research works. They'll put that and give you a comprehensive note that is suitable for them. And if they're setting their question, they'll set it out from this handout and from this e-notes that they've given you. So make sure that you lay emphasis on the slides and the handout that your lecturers give to you first. Now once you're done with these, then you can go ahead and add a little bit here and there with your textbooks and your research. Learn new meanings and terminologies that you're being taught. Like I already said, it goes hand in hand also with the simplifying your topics. But whenever you pass your exam and you go to the next class, you're going to be introduced to new topics, new courses, and these new courses will come with new languages and new terminologies that you've not heard before. Make sure that as you're seeing these terminologies, you're, like I said, have a dictionary with you to Google them, to search them up and make sure you understand the terminology you're reading. You can't come and say you're reading anterior posterior and you don't know what that means. You're just reading it just for reading's sake. How are you supposed to comprehend that? You're seeing a new word, you see ambulation, you're like, you don't know what this means. Make sure you Google it, check a dictionary. If you're with someone and you just hear the terminology and you're not with a dictionary or your phone near you, ask them, what does that mean? You're new to this system, you're new to this particular level. Do not be too shy to ask these questions. Do not let shyness deprive you of learning and understanding as much as you should as a medical student. Have, even if it's one or two people, asking them, hi, please, what does this terminology mean? You will not die. Open your mouth and ask that question, because these doctors, they'll be referring to terminologies to you. They'll be talking to you not just in just normal English language. They'll be talking with medical terminologies there, and if you cannot understand what they're telling you, how are you supposed to understand what they're teaching you? So if you go into a new class, you go into a new level and you introduce to new courses, make sure that you're learning the new terminologies along the way. You're not just listening to them, not understanding anything, but you're just listening to the new terminologies and you're like, wow, what is that? What is that? Ask your Google, what does this mean? So that you understand what your lecturers are saying in class, and also when you get back home, you understand what you're reading. Another thing I want to lay emphasis on is brain hypertrophy. When it comes to examination time, there's a lot for you to do. But if you're going to be making out time, even if it's in a day, you look at the topic that has been taught to you. I, for one, that I'm telling you this, is hard for me to do, but I've tried my best to start incorporating it, especially in this clinical, because there's a lot that's going on in your clinical program. You're not just in school, you're going out of school for postings, you're going to the hospital for postings, you come back late in the evening, sometimes you go for night shifts so that you will learn one or two things during emergencies. So there's a lot going on and you might not find the time to study intensively. But even if it's to look at the topic, even if it's to glance through it, that is helping your brain to actually hypertrophy over time based on that topic, so that by the time you're going back to that topic again, even though you glance through it, you skim through it, by the time you're not doing an intensive reading, the few things, the new terminologies you've learned during that skimming period of that topic will help you to read and scale through that study session even faster. Understanding that even if it's 1 or 2 or 3 hours in a day is very stressful, I know, after school activities, but you can just be on your bed and just scroll through the topic that has been given you on that day. You don't have to sit down with your pen and your paper and be writing. Just skim through it for that particular week. Then maybe on the weekend you go back to that topic. It will help your brain at that point in time. You've looked at it, you skim through it. It will now help your brain to understand it even better by the time you're looking at it again. It is not a new topic to you, is not a new terminology to you. It's something you've looked at and you've seen how it looks like before. So now that you're reading it, you know what to expect when you're reading it. So it will help you out in reading faster, assimilating better, and also comprehending better. Having a good relationship with your lecturers, especially in Nigerian medical schools. So there are some examinations you go into and the question they will ask you is, identify these lecturers who are here. What are their names? And if you don't know the names of your lecturers because you don't have a decent relationship with them and they don't know you, there is a high chance of them looking at you, especially when it comes during your oral exam. Let them say you didn't do so well in your theory or your practical, and they're looking for a way to scale your mark for you, and you cannot even answer the simple question of who are these lecturers. They'll look at you and be like, you're not even serious enough for us to look for a way to help you out of this situation, and you see yourself failing when you would have had the chance to pass an examination. So make sure you have a decent amount of relationship with your lecturers. These lecturers like to feel important, so make them feel important and they'll help you out one way or the other. Make sure you know the names of your lecturers. Like I said, if you're studying and writing the topics that you're being taught according to the names of your lecturers, you will have a decent amount of knowledge of who and who these lecturers are. And also, if you show yourself, medical school, especially clinical program, is not just a program of reading and passing the exam, it's also a program of showmanship. That's why most of the time you see your lecturers, they'll emphasize on you're not coming around. It might sound like a joke to you, but it's actually a very serious situation that they need to know your face. Even if they don't know your name, it's better that they know you as that person that always comes and they sit at the back, or just comes and doesn't say anything, than someone that does not come at all. So it's not just one thing for you to study and write. You're still going to have to present yourself in oral exams, do some clinical presentations, and if they've seen you come around before, if they've seen you in the clinical rotations before, they might be like, okay, this person does show his or her face, this person actually tries his or her best to come, but it might be just examination tension, or maybe they're just anxious because of the exam. That's why they made this little mistake, and they will just, look past your mistake. But if you don't show your face and you make, even if it's the simplest mistake, they'll be so upset and pissed and be like, I'm in the hospital working my ass off, and you cannot even just come and show your face as a student, and here you are making this silly mistake, and you see them failing you. But if you're showing your face often and they know you to be someone who is regular to classes and to hospital rotations, if something happens, unfortunately, they'll be willing to help you out one way or the other, because they know that you're actually working for it, but you're just a human being, and maybe tension got the best out of you. If you're a medical student and you just need admission into the university, go ahead and subscribe and turn on your post notification bell, because in my next video I'll be giving you tips on how I survived as a medical student in the hostel, because coping and studying as a medical student in a hostel can be quite daunting. I'll be giving you tips and the lessons that I wish I knew earlier as a student that will be going into the hostel very soon, so that you yourself, you wouldn't make that same mistake that I made that affected me in med school when I was still in the hostel. And don't forget to like this video, because it helps YouTube to push out my video to more like-minded people like you. And I'll see you guys very soon in my next video. Until then, stay happy and stay blessed. So our pre-clinicals, we did not use fridge, so you know that everything right now keeps laying emphasis. Everything is really pricey, foodstuff inclusive. So learn to cook in smaller quantities, something that will last you maybe a day or two, that you just come back, you warm it and eat it, and it won't spoil. Don't go cooking for the generations and then you keep it and in 2 days it'll spoil. So every single day your food is spoiling. Why?